Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. Are you evaluating your career in real estate? Feel like you're ready for a fresh start? Or ready to take your career to the next level? This is your podcast. Welcome back to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. My first episode I did with Chris over here was so popular that we thought we'd bring him back again. So Chris, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So what we're going to talk about today that we thought might be helpful for you who are listening to hear is when to hire someone to support you, whether you're a solo agent or a newer agent. And if you're building a team, when does it make sense to make an additional hire? So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the way that we think about this. And it's something that is not I wouldn't say it's like a cut and dried answer for everybody. It's something that has a lot of subjectivity, and it depends on some factors in your business, not the least of which is the revenue that you have and the amount of business that you have coming in. But here's the thing that I find happens a lot, especially with the agents that I coach, is that they're in a situation where they are fiercely in production. So they are like head down, hustling, they're out there doing the business of real estate, and they are so busy with the business of real estate, doing everything, and they usually do it pretty well. You guys listening probably know that, you know, if you're in production and you are doing a good job, it's really easy for you to do everything. But is that always the right thing for you to do? Right, Chris is shaking his head because, you know, we've gone through this for both of our businesses, right? But sometimes it's really hard to be able to like take a breath and make a decision to hire someone else, because what comes up for you? Like, you know, Chris, talk about this a little bit. So when we've talked about hiring people, and this is, again, one of those things that, as you know, if those of you who are in business with a partner or a spouse, you know, this can be one of the things that comes up that's difficult to navigate, is you've got a few issues that come up for you. So I think I recognized pretty early on for me that I needed an assistant. And I remember hearing a story, and I think I've told this on the podcast before, so if you've been listening for a while, you might have heard this, but where there was an agent who was really, really productive. And it was one of the like OG agents here in the farm area that I now, you know, dominate. But she had gotten to a point where she had so many voicemails. This was back in the days where we didn't have like the iPhones with, you know, giant voicemail memory. She would write everything down on sticky notes and she stuck them in a pile on her desk, and it like piled up and up and up and up and up to the point where she was like, I can't even deal with this. She took the whole chunk of voicemails, most of which were come list me calls, buyers wanting to look at properties, and she threw the whole thing in the trash. Yeah. How many tens of thousands of dollars, how many clients could she have served? How many future transactions could that have been if she hadn't done that? But she felt so overwhelmed, she just didn't know how else to deal with it. So at that point she went, okay, I need an assistant to help me sort through this, to help me schedule my appointments, to take some of the load off of me so I can concentrate on the exceptional client services that I have promised and that I've built my business on. So overwhelm often is the thing that you might feel that gives you that sense of, I know I need help, but then there's the other piece of like, how do I get the help? And what is it going to cost me in a number of ways to get it? That sometimes stops us in our tracks and leaves us doing all the things that are not the highest and best use of our time, and that actually cause that roller coaster that most people in real estate ride on over and over again, where they're like, production, oh my gosh, no, there's nothing else, I have to, because I produce so much, I didn't have any support, I didn't keep my foot on the lead generation gas pedal, now my business is falling apart, I'm back down here, panic, and then we go back up again. It's that, you know, dreaded J curve that Tom Ferry always talks about, and it's that roller coaster, that wave pattern that most agents' businesses are built on. So putting foundational pieces in place, including a support staff or person, can begin that upward trajectory that keeps those downward cycles much more tempered and hopefully not happening at all. So I just talked a whole lot, asked you a question I didn't let you answer, but let me let you answer now. So probably not. So the question I have for you is, when we have talked about hiring support in the past, and so you guys know the dynamic if you haven't sensed it already. I'm usually like the risk taker, yeah, let's do all the things. And Chris is the conservative, like, maybe let's not do all the things. Let's think about this logically first. So there's like the resistance is sometimes what you give me. And sometimes it comes up for you, for reasons that are, I think, based on like what we've talked about, a lot of agents feel. So for you, when we talked about for you hiring somebody to help you, because you were doing, tell the people listening, what were all the things that you were doing in your role?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of husbands out there doing the similar things as doing all the systems in the background, going and putting up signs, changing lock boxes, going over to the main thing, which take a while, is going over to houses. I was putting up lights in houses when we needed to replace lighting, or taking a lot of garbage out, which I still have done recently, but have not assistant but a person to help me with it this time. Yeah. Moving probably a 5x5 huge amount of cinder blocks that the seller left in the house. And then, just there's so many different things that I almost think it's a full-time job pretty much now. What I was doing then, we're keeping our person, CMAs, doing, there's all kinds of stuff that I was doing in the background. I've been doing this for many years, but at a much smaller scale, I think, back then than what we've done.
Client services at the same time. So I think, and what was happening, I think, is the intent of your role was to be like, helping us to develop the business and to put some like pieces in place to tackle some of the big projects that I had in my vision, and to be able to like plan. And instead, what was happening?
Well, I think, and I think what it ended up, so I was always not getting some things done, which was causing problems, or I was trying to hurry up too fast, and I was making mistakes. And, I think it also was just trying to, in a way, cut costs, but I think in the end it was costing because we weren't expanding, because I was staying so busy with that I wasn't doing other things.
Yes.
So that, and I think it got to the point where we started increasing with all the marketing, increasing our listings. And I'm like, there's no way I can do all this. And I even told the person who works for us that I was like, I couldn't do this without, there's no way we would have been able to do what we've done in the last few months with the increased amount of listings by myself or with you. I think we would have been pulling our hair out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, you said a couple of important things there. One is you were like so busy with the business of doing all the things, you couldn't really like direct or lead the business. And two is you were like, you got to the point where you're like, this is costing more in what we're able to do. Because the point of this business, for most of you listening, isn't for you to just be busy 24 hours a day, right? The point of you doing the business, you've got a greater why somewhere that exists for you. So like for us, probably like for many of the people listening, it's so that we can enjoy more time with our families and give them an exceptional life, and we can serve our clients at a very high level. And when things started to feel stretched so thin, not only did we not have any time to spend with the family or each other, but we also, like you said, we're starting to like drop the ball and make mistakes that shouldn't have been made. That we're starting to like feel like for us, our client services weren't where we wanted them to be, and we never wanted that to happen. And it was just like little stuff. I don't think it was really visible outside of us, but we have an exceptional standard that we hold ourselves to. So we wanted to make sure that that was intact, like I'm sure so many of you do. So the issue became, and it was a lot of like putting out fires too, right? Because we didn't have time to stop and go, okay, if we put this in place, that's going to prevent this fire from erupting, and I won't have to go put out that fire. Instead, it was just very reactive, right?
Right. Yeah. And then whenever we go away, we couldn't really relax because everything would fall apart once we left, or there was nobody to assist us. So,
So you couldn't even really go away.
But the only positive thing with me having done all those jobs is now I'm able to actually, when they need help, or I can explain what I would do or how they may be able to do it better. I've done the job, so now I understand it. So it's a little easier to explain that, I find.
So let me unpack that for a second. Is it 1,000% necessary to have done the job before you delegate? Because we have heard agents say things like, who are brand new and get busy with their first transaction, and now they're feeling like they have to spend time understanding the contract, and they have to spend more time than they thought doing all the things that we know go into getting a listing ready. But they didn't anticipate that it was going to be so much. And their knee jerk is, I think I need to hire an assistant. But they don't know how to do the basics of the job yet. So what do you say to that?
I mean, I think we've told our agents, you need to go and like kind of push back on them wanting the answers from us sometimes, that we know the answer, we can tell them, but then the next time it happens, they're going to ask the question again.
No, but I mean specifically someone who wants to hire an assistant. So someone who's new, they've gotten into this quick success. They haven't done all the nuts and bolts of the job, but now they're like, you know what, I'm going to bring an assistant on to do that for me. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think it may help in some ways, and I think it may create more problems in others because they don't know how to teach the other person to do the job if they don't know the job themselves or what they need to do. So they can't have somebody do the contract for them if they don't know if the contract in the first place. So the person may be doing the contract, but did they do it correctly?
Right.
So
yeah.
that I think they run into. I do think there's a lot of ways, depending on how they use a person, if it's marketing or something that's out of their, the agent's thing to build up the business, but then they got to know how to handle that business that comes in at that point in time.
Right.
So.
Because what you don't want to happen is you are at the mercy of that person and they leave and then you're really stranded. In fact, there's an agent I know pretty well who had a situation where she hadn't written a contract in so long, she didn't know how to do it anymore. And she was panicked because she had this assistant who was kind of like, I'll use the word extorting, it's probably a little strong, but kind of like holding her hostage and said, unless you pay me, because she knew she was really hamstrung without her, she said, unless you pay me twice what I'm making right now, I will leave. And I'm not giving you any notice. I know I'm supposed to, but I'm out. And then this agent was like, I don't know what to do, because if I have an offer that I need to write or I have a listing, I don't know how to do the paperwork. And so the tough love that we gave this agent as a group of friends was learn how to write the contract. Like, you never want to be in the position where you can't do the basic things that are required for your job because you've delegated at such a high level that then if the person leaves you, or God forbid an emergency happens, your business stops. That can't happen either. So I agree with you.
A person could get in a car accident, not be able to write or anything. So
anything could happen. Yeah. Okay. So the flip side of that is then, well, let me finish asking you. So that came up for you is you had all these things happening. What came up for you originally because we talked about this and it was like, I would say you got to start delegating. You got to find somebody to delegate to. You got to find somebody to delegate to. So what was your initial hesitancy? What came up for you when you thought about hiring somebody else?
Probably a couple things. One, financially, it feels like, well, it is. The real estate market's up and down in different ways, but we're finding ways around that now. Two, I don't have the time to train a person. And then having to train them, and that takes up this much time, and then I can't get this done, and then, that's the down path that you go.
Right, exactly.
But it went a little easier, I think, than I thought it would.
Got it.
And it's my stress level, I think, is gone. I'm sure yours has too, because you're not coming to me, why isn't this done when it's already done now?
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, and I think too, what you just said, it was a little easier than you thought it would be. And I think there are a couple tips I want to give, and I'll do that in a second, for making it a little bit easier. But I think part of it is too, realizing that you have to spend time to get time later, right? So spending, who was that speaker that we listened to? Oh my gosh, Rory Vaden talked about the fact that, 30 minutes spent now buys you 3 hours later. Right, exactly. Yeah, like you're investing a small amount of time to get a ton of time back later on. So even though it might feel painful in the moment, you're leveraging your time in such a different way. And you just said stress too. My gosh, that's kind of unquantifiable, the amount of, it's probably more life you're getting back actually when you start to reduce your stress as well. So thinking about that, and then also talking about the financial, the expense part of it too, right? You do have to be smart about this. So if you are running it on a shoestring budget and you are operating with no revenue or very little profit, even if you have a lot of revenue, it might not make sense to bring on an assistant yet. Or you might want to be very strategic about what you bring an assistant on for. Might be, time to hire a VA if it is something that a VA could handle for you and it's a relatively limited pool of tasks that you want the person to do for you. If you need somebody who's part-time, exactly, part-time is another way to do it. Or some kind of a hybrid structure where you have an hourly wage or a salary plus a bonus for performance or for certain services rendered. So there are different ways to work around this. If you have a real estate coach, your coach can really help you figure this out. If you don't have a real estate coach, check out the Tom Ferry organization, plug for coaching. It makes all the difference in the world. But back to, figuring out like the expense part of it is helping, and you can, there's some research you can do online, but helping yourself to understand what the going rate is for certain types of jobs, that's important too. But figuring out too, what is your hourly rate? So this is Did you know that 63% of sellers and buyers choose their agent based on local proximity? That's why farming or geo-farming is such a proven method for long-term success in real estate. If you've been considering becoming a farmer or a geo-farmer in your market, but not sure how to get started, check out Farming for Real Estate Agents. This blueprint will walk you through exactly how to choose a geofarm area, how to figure out by running some calculations whether the farm area that you're selecting can support your goals, and will help you track your return on investment. You'll also hear from locally famous farmers who have already dominated their market shares, so you can R&D their secrets and dominate the area that you choose to geofarm. So this is an exercise that you and I have done, and I would challenge you listening to do this as well. So figure out how many hours on average you work in a week, and then figure out how does that calculate for the year, and then figure out what your hourly salary to yourself is. So what's your gross commission earned for the past 12 months, and then divide it by that hourly rate to figure, or hours rather, number of hours to figure out what your hourly rate is. I think you're gonna find that your average per hour rate is much higher than what most assistants would be paid. So then what you have to do is think about every time a task comes up that you're doing, that in the back of your mind you're like, I wish I wasn't doing this, or I know an assistant could do this for me. Are you paying yourself $25 or $30 an hour to do something that with the same spend of your own time, you could be making your typical hourly rate? So figure that out and see whether it really makes sense. You could start with a very simple time use documentation. Go through an average week of your tasks, write down every single thing you do, and figure out first what are the things that could happen without you versus the things that you absolutely must do. Like for example,
well, any kind of revenue producing task.
Right. So for example, most agents, they need to be the one at a listing appointment. They need to be the one at a buyer consultation. They need to be the one sitting down and walking the client through a contract. Do they need to be the one running a sign? No. Do they need to be the one sticking the lockbox in the house?
No.
Absolutely not. Clearing out the stuff from a house before it goes to settlement? Right, exactly. So those are the things that you're like, okay, then who could you bring in who might be a resource for you that can help you leverage your time and make your use of time much more appropriate and valuable? So the other piece of it is figuring out how to make the process easier. So you talked about that a little bit, how like for you were like, I don't know, this seems like it's gonna be really hard and I'm gonna spend a lot of time training the person, right?
Right.
So what do you think made it easier?
Well, basically I trained them while I was doing the task, so I would do it and then show them while I was doing it. So I wasn't really taking extra time because I would have done it anyway. So I just showed them while I was doing the actual task. And then the next time I would let them do it. We also recorded everything. So
that's such a key.
And even with the admin that we have now, the two that just left to do new things, we had them record everything. So if it's somebody new and they don't know the task, instead of us having to teach that person again, we tell them to go back and look at the help center, see if there's videos for it first. If there's not, then we will create a video again for it.
So let's slow down and break that down for the person listening so you understand exactly what we're talking about. So what Chris is referring to is and I want to back up even farther than that, which is I think the most critical thing is finding the right person.
Oh yeah.
And not to say that they're like, you should hire or interview 5 million people. Find the right person and know when you have that person who's aligned with your culture and your way of doing business. The thing that I've heard that I find to be very true is hire for personality and alignment with your culture rather than skill, because skill can be taught. So if you find the person that you're like, they've got that spark, they've got that light in their eyes, they are, for us, they're polite, they are receptive, they are team players, they're collaborative, they have the same level of exceptional service and excellence in what they do in execution that we have. Like, those are the most important things to us. We can teach the skill for those other things. And one of the ways that we teach that skill is make sure that we've got a good knowledge base, knowing that everybody learns differently. So what we want to do is, and if you're thinking about hiring somebody, I would highly recommend that you start doing this once you've identified the things that you could delegate or hire for, is to start recording, meaning on video, how you're doing those things. So one of the really early things that I did that I realized that I could delegate was inputting a listing into the MLS. So I got on my computer, and I think at the time I was using, like, I don't know, even if it was Zoom at the time, whatever existed back then. And I just, as I'm going through it, I'm like talking through, just kind of like narrating how I do it. Okay, so first what you do is you open up the MLS, and here's the credentials, and here's what the screen you navigate to, like the whole entire process all the way through, doing a screen capture as well, so the person could see exactly what I was doing. Take that video, stick it into the MLS. Now, when somebody comes in, do I go, okay, so just go watch the video? Of course not. No, what we do is we train them as well, and then we say, and you've got an evergreen asset in our knowledge base. Our help center is what we call it. So you can always go back there, and if you need like a little bit of a reminder, if you're not doing this every single day, about how to enter the listing into the MLS, it's all there for you. Now, once you start bringing an assistant in, the other beautiful thing an assistant can do for you is record everything that you do. So watching you, shadowing you, and helping to document, so that if there's a transition in the role, if somebody retires, like we just had happen, or whatever, goes to law school, like we just had happen, there is this beautiful set of instructions that exists for them to go back through. I highly recommend that you do a video set of instructions and a written set of instructions. Again, because people do take in information in different ways, and not everybody's going to want to watch an 8-minute video on every single thing.
Right, yeah, we just loaded in ChatGPT and had it transcribe the
Yep,
videos.
yep, so Chat or Descript can do that for you. You can just transcribe the videos into step-by-step instructions for you. So the other thing is when you are doing that, highly recommend that you have somebody else test the instructions for you. So get another set of eyes on it, because sometimes what made total sense to you, because you know it, you've done it, there's a gap, there's like a hole in the chain that you didn't see, that somebody else who's testing it will see, and then you can go back and you can fill that hole.
Yeah, especially if you use real estate jargon and they're not really familiar with real
Right.
estate, and you're trying to explain stuff to them. So
Good point. Yeah, good point. And then the other thing is what I call the I do, we do, you do training model, which seems to work really, really well. So first the person watches what you do and sort of takes in the information, and then you do it together. So you might say, okay, you try this, and let me show you that. And the person's going to say, well, I forget that part. And you go, okay, well, let me remind you about that. And then they do it. So it's like that 3-part process, which again, although it sounds like it takes some time, it takes a little bit of time. It is so worth it, because it buys you all that time back in the long run. And then if you do that, the I do, we do, you do, then you've got the asset for them to rely back on if they need a refresher. Then you've got a good system going. When you think about other things that you've learned as you've hired, I think as we've like built out the people who are here that support us, who are all amazing, the question then becomes sometimes, when is it time to add somebody else on the staff? So what are the things that you think about, Chris, when you're like, okay, is it time to bring another person on?
well, I think one of them for me is the revenues coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I see potential for increasing the revenue if we actually can have some tasks done that the staff that we have right now cannot do. Or more things that we're doing, are we able to offset those to somebody else as well, even more that we're doing, to where they may be doing some of the revenue generating stuff, or utilizing AI, like we want to bring in someone to do AI for us and make it even more efficient, everyone more efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
In all the roles. So
yeah, and I think when you have like specialized departments like that, that's one of the things I think about too, although I love learning all of the AI, and I'm going to put a plug in right now for Jason Pantana's AI Marketing Academy. It is phenomenal. If you go to academy.jasonpantana.com, you can find this. It's a monthly subscription. It is worth its weight in gold. So good. He shows you step by step how to utilize the tools that are most applicable to the real estate business, and it is like magical what some of these do for you.
Yeah,
One day we'll do
nice.
one day we'll do a podcast on using AI in real estate. But anyway, but that's a specialization. So I do love to learn that, and I do learn it. But is that my highest and best use of my time in terms of implementation to all aspects of the business? No, nor do I have like the knowledge and bandwidth to probably creatively think about all the ways that it could apply. So we'll bring somebody in to do that because we know what the possibilities there are. But I also know that's a whole job. So if I spend all of my time figuring out how to apply all of the AI tools that exist to my business, I wouldn't be able to service my clients.
Yeah.
So there's like the kind of balance of figuring out, it's kind of like marketing, right? Like so many of us, I love marketing. I would sit down and play with Canva all evening if I could. But again, it would pull me away from some of the other things that I could be or should be doing with my time. So we have a marketing manager who deals with those sorts of things. The other thing is, I think when you get to a certain point in production where you really want like your time freed up to sort of do other things too, no matter how much we love doing this. And you guys know if you do this and love it, you could do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But being able to pivot to doing things that also fill you up in other ways, like spending time with your family, with a creative outlet, so important. And you really can only do that at a certain level once you have support staff in place. And then the other thing is, once your team really starts to grow, so once you have a lot of agents coming in, they're producing, they need multiple services, the only way you can sustain a team, which really is like your company as you're building it, is to bring on a support staff. Question for you, I'm interested to know what your thinking is on this, is there a situation in which you can become like upside down, like you've got, your staff is too much and like you have too few agents or too little business to support it, and what happens then?
Well, I think we're sort of running into that now sometimes, where we have so many listings coming in that we don't have the agents to hold open the open houses, or we got the open houses but we have a lot of buyers that we end up having, and that's very time consuming with going out and showing houses too. So if you don't have the agents to give those leads to, then it becomes a problem, because you're kind of almost in a way turning away business by not following up on those calls. And you can keep going higher with that. So we can keep the marketing machine, keep all these listings coming in, but then it's just jumping now to listing and not generating additional income that you could be passing off and making money from, the agent could be making money and you can from the leads. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And here's a plug for the List Realty. I'm plugging a lot of things today, but if you're in the Maryland area and you're looking for a brokerage to join, we are in need of agents. And if you're listening, we've got all of the systems in place and ways to get you in front of listings if listings are what you want, and very high intent buyer leads to give you. So hit us up if you are interested in exploring opportunities here. But I think you're exactly right. Having the right number of agents who are productive and available to support the business in place is also really fundamentally important. And we'll talk about recruiting at another during another podcast. But yeah, all of those things are very important. So when you get to a point of having enough revenue and enough business to support a staff, and you have that recognition that what you're doing, your use of your time, could be better spent doing other things, I think that's the answer. That's the time when you should be looking at hiring somebody and then the process for doing it. So I want to conclude with how do you find the person? We've been very, I guess I'm going to say, lucky and grateful that we've had people around us that we recognize as talent, and we're able to bring them in, and people that we have connections with in different ways. So for our staff, we have people who are just like, they're known entities, and we're very grateful to have them all because they're very talented at what they do. But for the agent out there who's like, I don't know anybody who I think would make a good assistant, or I don't know anybody who would be...
I think it's funny, we paid for Indeed ads and LinkedIn, Wise Hire, and the best way we've gotten things, Nextdoor, Facebook.
Yeah.
Those ended up, I almost think every single hire we ended up not using any of the paid job search sites.
Right.
We ended up using local, like somebody knows somebody on Facebook. Facebook's been one of the key ones, and then I'm pretty certain we got somebody from Nextdoor one time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And for us, again, we've got a brick and mortar space and we want people who are here in the office. So if you want somebody virtual, you probably could use like an Indeed or a WiseHire or LinkedIn even. Those probably are
or
useful.
hire a VA company to do some of it.
Or a VA company, right. Yeah, so it depends what you want, but I think you're exactly right. The known entities that have come to us have been either like directly connected to us through social media or through like our just general organic network in some way, or they have been bubbled up to us from people who saw our posting on Facebook or Nextdoor and said, I think I know somebody who might be a good fit, and then connected us.
And we've
So
brought
don't
on
discount those.
interns that start off as interns that
Yeah.
come to
Yeah.
be with
Become
us, and that
permanent
was always a good
members of the
start
team.
while they're in college.
Right.
Um,
Right, yeah, college interns, that's a great way to think about bringing people in who are interested in real estate too. And now there's a real estate major in most
colleges,
colleges, yeah. And those people are great interns. So thinking ahead for next season, if you are listening to this, now, which is the middle of the summer here, you might think about starting in like the very early spring or late winter, putting some feelers out for people who want internships during the summer. They have been some of our best team members and employees. All right, Chris, anything else that you would add about when to pick a hire?
Not when, but I think if you have multiple admin staff, is to be very clear who's doing what task. Because we found when we expanded too fast that like who's doing that job, and we couldn't remember that you actually keep track of like the spreadsheet we have, who's doing what task, and it's clear to everybody who does what, because there's a lot of overlap between the different roles.
Yeah, and then I think too, we can talk about this maybe in another show as well, is structuring meetings so everybody knows what they're doing, everybody's on the same page, and then goes back into their own lanes, and then structuring evaluation methods so that people have a set of KPIs, those are key performance indicators that they know they're aiming toward, and that you're evaluating based on those KPIs and able to keep people moving forward, feeling good about their job and knowing that they are doing what they are being asked to do, or they have very clearly identified areas for improvement that they can work on. All right, so I think that was pretty much the nuts and bolts of it, right? Hopefully that was helpful. You guys got a lot out of this. If you have questions for us, feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram. I am Meredith, The List Realty. What's your Instagram?
I have no idea what
Chris
mine
doesn't
is.
know what his Instagram is, but you can DM us. You can find him, Chris Fogle, he's on
Somewhere.
Facebook, right? And feel free to, if you want to email us, you can do that too. You can find us if you go to the List Realty website, you can find our contact information. All right, thank you for listening and for being here. If you have any questions for us, we would appreciate you reaching out. Please feel free to leave us a review or a rating on the platform on which you are listening. We would be so grateful. Send us ideas for future shows. We always love to hear from you. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. See you next time.